Bino viewers on episode 349 of the Actual Astronomy Podcast. I'm Chris, and joining me is Shane. We are amateur astronomers who love looking up at the night sky, and this podcast is for everybody who likes going out under the stars. Let's see. Yeah, we were just gonna start talking about astronomy and not record, but we thought, hey, what the heck? Let's record an episode with us talking about Bino viewers and astronomy. So you were asking a couple of questions, Shane. I'll ask you that same question first. Did you get out observing last night?
No, I did not. I was pretty disappointed with the whole weekend. I was fully anticipating to be in Grasslands National Park East Block for the weekend for some new moon or very close to new moon observing. And, I spent the week slowly getting all of my gear together. Thursday night into Friday morning, packed my vehicle. But Thursday afternoon, the forest fire smoke really set in, and I just had hopes that it would eventually leave, but it didn't. And Friday, Saturday were very, very smoky, and the air quality index was quite high. It was
10 plus.
It was not good. I was out Friday night at about midnight. It started to, the smoke had dissipated enough and some of the clouds started to disappear that, I could see a few stars. And then last night, I just didn't stay up late enough and didn't bother doing any observing, but full of disappointment on my side. Were you able to get out?
Yeah, I'm of course, way out here in the country, or, I don't know, 45 minutes outside of the city, not too far out in the middle of nowhere or anything like that, but just out here and at my dark sky location, I guess I call it, though Bill Weir was a little disappointed when I sent him these, there's other places around. I'm like, well, yeah, we're not like living on desolate island here or anything like that. But yeah, I was able to get out and do some binocular observing because I was surprised it cleared out enough. I could see just a hint of the Milky Way, unaided eye. And I thought, I'll grab my binoculars and try out the observatory, give that a shot. The walls are up now and the roof skeleton frame is on, but it's rolled off. My builder's rolling it off so that I can go up in there and set up telescopes or binoculars or do whatever I want if we get a good night. So it's kind of neat to be able to give that a trial run. But I was able to see the double cluster unaided eye and through binoculars looked pretty good. I could see M31 unaided eye. It was better in the north. Towards the south, I could see the Milky Way only running down in as far as Scutum, and below that, I couldn't even see hardly any stars in Sagittarius, and I could just make out Antares and the stars of Ophiuchus. But I was looking at some of the globular clusters in Ophiuchus and Scutum star cloud and M11, and looked at the Lagoon Nebula and Trifid. It was pretty muted, though. There was still tons of that smoke kicking around the upper atmosphere, and you could see the light kind of reflecting off it from the city. But it was just nice to be able to get out for 15 or 20 minutes.
Yeah, that's awesome. If there's a silver lining for my failed travel attempts, it's that I'm hoping to join you guys in Grasslands West Block this coming weekend. So that I'm excited for that. Hopefully we have good conditions.
Yeah, I'm hoping you can as well. It's always a lot of fun to get together and observe. Maybe we could even record a short showdown there or something. And be fun. We could call it the showdown because we're down further south.
That's right.
Yeah.
I like it.
And the observatory is coming along. We're learning lots. Lots. Got the roof rolling. I think I sent you the video on that. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah. The photos and the video that you sent, it's really looking good. It's starting to take shape and look like an observatory. It'll be wonderful once it's completed.
Yeah, I'm definitely learning. We're learning a few things. There's definitely things we would do a little bit different. I really wish I had about another meter or two of space, or maybe in feet, 5 or 6 more feet of width on the hilltop, because I definitely really would have preferred to go 10 by 10. But we just crammed it in as much as we could. And you'll see, there was some bushwhacking that had to take place to get the the support system up for the gantry, or the area that the roll-off roof goes on. And had we gone 10 by 10, we would have had to go back almost another meter and go ahead another foot, and it just would have eaten up like so much of the hilltop. And really, I don't know what it would be like to go back any further than we did. So just one of those things. Also, I would have ordered the rails sooner, because we end up losing about 8 inches of rollability or back roll. We can go 2 feet back from the edge of the observatory now, but we could have gone back another 7 or 8 inches. We just end up with rails. I guess they leave a few more inches onto those rails from Alico. So we probably would have gone with a slightly further rollback, just added another, like I said, 7 or 8 inches onto the gantry. Would have been nice, just to have the roof back just a scooch further, but it's not a big deal. Still working out some of the logistics with the pier, but it's slowly coming together. So this is the roof week coming up this week. So excited to get it sort of sealed in, and then probably the following week is the week that we're going to finish the pier and finish all the other little bits and pieces. So should be an August long weekend, should be the official telescope mounting. I hope that's the plan anyway. So yeah, it takes a while though.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Are you insulating it?
No insulation.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
Because that'll just keep the heat inside. I know there's like a lot of debates on whether to insulate it or not, and there's all this other sage advice. But there's a really good video on building roll-offs by Richard Berry, who's built an awful lot of roll-offs, and he's a well-known telescope builder and amateur astronomer. And he kind of wrote the book, and I bought it. It's a real old book on building observatories, sort of in this like old style. And that's how we're building it. It's like sort of the OG way with some of the new finagled equipment that he recommends. And it seems to be working good. For example, we're only using 4 wheels. Roof is about 400 pounds right now, and you can roll it with 2 fingers.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. In fact, it rolls a little too well. So we're trying to figure out a way to sort of break it a little bit on either ends, because we're going to put some rubber bumpers on or something. Because even if you just lay your hand on it and kind of think about the direction you want it to roll, it will roll in that direction. Or even if there's a light breeze, it will roll. Like when I open it, we'll have to put a mechanism to secure it or keep it from rolling back over the observatory, because it will just continue to roll. And when you push it off, you don't want to give it any more force than what you would to open a cabinet door, for example, or open a drawer in your kitchen that maybe is a heavier drawer with a lot of utensils. You don't want to use any more force than that.
Yeah, this is awesome. I'm excited to see it get to the completion state and see how it works when you get the telescope in there and start using it.
Yeah, I'll be eager to get it finished, and have you and Mike out and be able to set up and observe whenever. And it's really nice to have the light blocking capability as well, because even though I'm in a reasonably dark spot, it's magnitude 6.3, or I guess it's like a Bortle 3.5, or not quite 4, and it is a populated area. There's probably, I don't know, maybe 1,000 or 2,000 people that live sort of in this lake valley of sorts, but it's just enough that somebody somewhere always has a light on. And even when it's dark and clear, that light can be annoying. So it's nice just to be able to have the scope sheltered from those ambient lights that are around. Even last night, I could tell inside the observatory, I could sense that I was getting like that really big bump in dark adaptation. Being in there for 15 or 20 minutes, you could tell like it was causing me to be more dark adapted, which I hadn't quite expected as much, but I guess it does make sense.
Well, that's good. Already giving you some positive returns.
Yeah, trying to figure out what color to paint it now. So whether it's going to be a light color, might go with an extremely light blue or white, or a very light like yellow, or like a cream color of sorts. But yeah, that'll be the fun bit.
Right on.
All right, let's chat about binoviewers. So I only have limited experience with these things, but when I went to my very first star party, I think it was still called Nova East even back then, which is the one they do in Nova Scotia now. But at the time, it was up in Fundy National Park in New Brunswick. I still think they do one there, but I don't think it's called Nova East. I think it's called something else. But it's a great spot, way up on a mountain of sorts, like an Appalachian mountain. Probably, you're maybe up. I don't know how high it is. Maybe 300 or 400 feet above the ocean level, maybe not quite that high, but right sort of at the peak of this large hill, you had like an old scout camp, and they had like this building, and people would go there each year and set up their scopes. Maybe there'd be 40, maybe 50 people that would show up to it. My first year that I went, somebody set up a 10-inch Smith-Cassegrain with a binoviewer and pointed at Jupiter. And I was astounded at the detail. It was something I don't even think I ever even heard of a binoviewer before. I'd only been doing astronomy for maybe 3 or 4 years at that point. And looking in, it was just astounding, the level of detail that you could see on Jupiter. And a friend of mine had one for his Daub, but he never really used it that much on the Daub. And I thought about a binoscope myself more than a binoviewer, but where do you want to get started with this, Shane? Maybe do you want to just explain what a binoviewer is over binoculars or telescopes and stuff?
So yeah, a binoviewer is a separate piece of gear that just goes into your telescope focuser or diagonal. And it basically switches your telescope from monoviewing into two-eyed viewing or binoviewing. And you can swap it between telescopes or just go back to monoviewing. It provides some flexibility.
Nice. And the binoviewer, though, does it reduce the amount of light that's coming through? Because it does split the light. Like how does the physical thing work exactly? Is it because it sort of inserts into either the telescope diagonal or into the focuser, and then the light is coming into this from the instrument? And then how does that work? Is it like a prism in there that's splitting the light, or do you know how that works?
Yeah, so there's two types of binoviewers that are out there. There's sort of the traditional binoviewer, which uses like a beam splitter, and then either prisms or mirrors to bounce the light up into your eye. And then there's another one or another style, and I think this one is a little bit newer. I think it's only been out maybe for the last 5 or so years, but I could be wrong. And it's known as a linear binoviewer. In fact, I think Mark Radici has one of these ones.
Okay.
And I don't know exactly how the linear ones work, but I believe you're getting kind of maximum light into each eye, but there's some trade-offs there as well. But I think I'll stick mostly to the more traditional style of binoviewer because that's what I have and it's what I know. So yeah, there is a beam splitter that takes all of the light coming from your telescope and basically sends 50% of it one direction and 50% of it the other direction. And essentially then each eye is only receiving about 50% of the light that it normally would when you're monoviewing. Now, at first that sounds poor. You want as much light as possible. But there's a summation factor that I'm not going to get into a lot of detail about. I think people could maybe research that if they're more interested. But the brain combines both images that your eyes are seeing, and the result is a slightly dimmer image than when you're mono viewing, but not 50% less. You can still see a lot of detail and a lot of brightness with a bino viewer. The part of this summation factor is when your brain is combining both images that your eyes are seeing, there's a little bit of a cleansing almost of the image. It's almost like your brain starts to sort of reject some of the noise or aberrations or sort of seeing issues like atmosphere issues that one eye just can't really ignore. And this is one of the benefits, and I think we'll get into some of the other benefits too, but one of the benefits of bino viewing, particularly with the planets, is that having two eyes observing does allow almost for like a slight uptick in seeing quality. There's been multiple times when I've gone out to observe Jupiter, and like with one eye, the seeing is not great. And by not great, I mean like sometimes I can't even see the brown equatorial bands of cloud. But I put in a Bino viewer and all of a sudden I can see them. And it's, again, the brain is sort of rejecting, I guess, like those brief moments of poor seeing and promoting kind of those good moments of seeing. And the result is that, like I said, you seem to get a little bit of an uptick in the seeing conditions when Bino viewing.
Nice. And I'm just sort of thinking about this. Here. So it splits the light. So you lose 50%. I think I've even read that people get between 20 and 40% bump by going to. So it's really mitigated the fact that you are splitting that light. There's another couple things that occur, Shane, and boy, I'm not sure if you just touched on this or not, but with some of these Bino viewers, don't you need to use a Barlow in the optical path in order to get them to focus? And I know you've had to do some work with your scopes in order to make sure that you could use a Bino viewer with them. Do you want to just sort of address the challenge with getting a binoscope or Bino viewer to focus in a telescope?
Yeah, for sure. So that is one of the downsides, is typically in order to get a Bino viewer to focus, you need to use a Barlow. And why I'm saying that's like a downside is you then lose the ability to have low power, wider fields of view. And the reason why a Barlow is often required is a Bino viewer adds an awful lot of light path to your telescope. And where this becomes an issue is a telescope is designed to focus. If we talk about refractors, Chris, the telescope maker will design the length of the optical tube to reach focus with a standard diagonal in the focuser and a standard eyepiece attached. When you add a Bino viewer, your Bino viewer probably is going to take up anywhere from 125 millimeters to maybe, I don't know, I'm going to guess about 150 millimeters to that focal point or to the light path of your telescope. So now, without any modifications to your telescope, when you just add a Bino viewer, you cannot rack the focuser in far enough to achieve focus on most telescopes because, of how long the light path is now. The eyepieces are essentially just too far out to reach focus. So you add a Barlow and you can overcome that. Now, the other thing you can do is some telescopes are Bino viewer friendly, meaning like you can take out sometimes a piece of the optical tube itself. They just unscrew. Sometimes it's just removing some other adapters, and then you can use the Bino viewer natively without any type of Barlow. The way you test for this, you just put your telescope. You can do this test during the daytime. In fact, it's probably better to do during the daytime, and you can even do it indoors. You need to measure where that focal point is for your telescope. So you put your telescope on the mount, put the focuser, rack the focuser all the way in, and then have somebody shine a light through your telescope. So, at the main objective, just shine a light in there, and then use a piece of cardboard if you want, or a piece of paper, and you just move that paper out from your focuser until you get a perfectly crisp circle. That is how much light path you have to play with. So measure that distance. And then that tells you, again, how much focal path is at play. I can't remember what my TSA is, but anyway, once you have that established, you then have to get the light path of all of the components that will be used for Bino viewing. So, typically you would start with your diagonal. Now, the best place to get this information is the maker's websites. So the Bader Zeiss prism that I use has 36 millimeters of light path in it. So that's part of it. I have a Beta quick attach adapter, which is 11 millimeters. So now I'm sitting at 37. And then my Bino viewer is 137 millimeters. And I have a couple more Beta adapters that attach to my focuser, which are about 10 millimeters. So you add all of that up. If it exceeds the measurement that you did with, the paper light experiment, you're going to have to use a Barlow. If it doesn't exceed, then you're probably okay to use that Bino viewer natively without any sort of Barlow, reducing your field of view.
Sorry, just to get back to your setup, are you using a Barlow in yours, or did you sort of work through all that so that you don't have to use the Barlow?
With my TSA 102, I am not using a Barlow or OCS. I'm using the Bino viewer natively. And that's one of the big reasons why I wanted the TSA 102, is because with using a couple of Beta adapters on the focuser, I'm able to shorten the light path enough that everything is, it works great. Now, my TAC 76 DCU, I am not able to achieve focus without a Barlow. So in that telescope, I do use a Barlow if I'm going to use the Bino viewer.
So with your setup that you have now in the TSA 102, the 4-inch, and it's like f8, I think it's like plus or 0.1, 0.2, something like that. But with your 4-inch refractor and the Bino viewer in, what are your lowest power eyepieces and what's your widest field with the Bino viewer? Do you know off the top of your head?
Yeah. So just about any Bino viewer you buy will be restricted to 1.25 inches. So essentially, with my Bino viewer in there, I can use the 24 millimeter Panoptix to get the widest field of view possible with 1.25 inches. So I can't remember what that is. 1.8 degrees, maybe? I can't remember. I would have to go do the math.
Yeah. So 8/16. Yeah, something like that. Because it'd be, is it 16 mag? No, it must be more than 16 magnification. It must be like 32 magnification in 800 millimeter focal length. So if they are 68, then that would give you like 2.1, maybe 2.2,
okay.
something like that. I'm just like,
just spitballing,
doing it in my head. Yeah. That's interesting. That's not so bad. And with like the lowest power eyepiece you could use in that, which would be like a 40, that would be 20, which would give you, you might get 3 1/3 degree field of view with the lowest power mono viewing eyepiece.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's about a degree smaller.
Yeah.
Okay.
One other thing, though, I should mention is the Bino viewer that I have is somewhat unique. Most Bino viewers, so there's the beam splitter at kind of the front of it, if you will, and then it splits that light and it hits prisms. Now, prisms induce some aberrations in there, and any Bino viewer that uses prisms typically will need what they call an OCS, or, depending on the maker, they have their own version or naming for it. But an OCS is an optical correction system. And not only does the OCS provide kind of that Barlow functionality to achieve focus, it also provides some correction for the aberrations caused by the prisms. So it's almost like you need to use it if you want the best view. Now, with that aside, the Bino viewer that I have, it's known as a CZAS, which is an acronym, CZAS, and that stands for Carl Zeiss Apochromatic Super Sharp Bino viewer.
Holy cow!
Yeah, it's quite
What
the
do these guys
mouthful.
work for the military or something?
Yeah, no kidding. The advantage of this Bino viewer is that it doesn't use prisms; it uses mirrors. So there are no aberrations introduced that the prisms would bring in. So the CZAS you can use without any kind of optical correction and have a really, crisp, clear view, mostly free of aberration.
About how much does something like that set you back?
I should have looked that up.
Even just
So
ballpark.
there's a person, I forget where he is. It might be Croatia. Dennis is his name, and he's quite an active poster on cloudy nights. And he's one of the two or three sort of Bino viewer gurus. He does a lot of Bino viewing, and he posts an awful lot of his experiences. And he sells these Bino viewers, and I believe they're probably around $1,500 US. Certainly not a cheap piece of gear. And there's certainly a lot more affordable Bino viewers out there. One of the more popular ones is the Baader Max Bright 2s. I think they're around $800 US, about half the cost. They get really, really good reviews. In fact, Bill Paoloni did an extensive review comparing both of them, the CZAS to the Max Bright 2s, and he felt that they were exceptionally close. I think he gave the CZAS a slight advantage, but he never goes out and says, you should buy this one or that one, but he certainly implies that it's not worth twice the price.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. I feel like we're getting into some of the downsides more than the upsides, but maybe the other downside is regarding the doubling up of eyepieces. You mentioned having two panoptic 24 millimeters, and then I know you've been collecting some other sets of eyepieces. What's sort of a good recommended set for people if they're getting started in this? And do you have any comments on the fact that you have to buy two of all eyepieces to use it?
Yeah, that again is another downside. You're doubling up, like you mentioned. One other downside that comes or plays a factor in the eyepiece choices, but the other downside is the weight. You're adding a lot of weight to the back end of your telescope, which could cause balance problems. Now, if you're also using heavy eyepieces, that just compounds the issue. So what I would recommend if you're interested in Bino viewing is just get Plossels. You could go 32 millimeter, 20 or 25, somewhere in that range, and then about a 10 to 12 millimeter pair. Plossels are far less far easier to afford than, say, some of the wider field panoptics. They're light. And the other thing that is an advantage of Bino viewing is the scale of the view. Now, a lot of times when you're looking through, say, 50 degree field of view eyepieces like a Plossel, they seem a little tight. The field of view seems a little restrictive. But using 50 degrees with a Bino viewer is very expansive. The Bino viewer changes the whole experience of observing. So I find 50 millimeters to be very sufficient, actually. Why do I keep saying millimeters? 50 degrees. Very, very, very comfortable, very nice viewing. So that's what I would recommend. And the other options, you could do orthos. I really like using 0.965 inch orthos with my Bino viewer because, again, they're super light. They provide really crisp views. And even though the field of view is a little tight through the Bino viewer, it just doesn't feel like that.
Yeah.
And then if you want to get into the wide fields, you want eyepieces that are not large physically, because if they're too big physically, they may not have enough space on the Bino viewer without, kind of touching each other or colliding. So some good eyepieces for wide field Bino viewing would be like the Panoptics for sure. They work well. The Nikon Nav SWs are really nice. Pentax had a couple of, what were they? The XF eyepieces. An 8.5 and a 12.5 or something like that. Those are also quite nice for Bino viewing. They're small, they're light, and they just work well.
All right. So what are some advantages of using the Bino viewer for you anyway, Shane? How do you use it, and why is it your sort of weapon of choice?
The number one reason for me is the relaxation. When I'm mono viewing, I can only look at an object for a certain amount of time before I have to blink, or I just have to give my eye a little bit of a break. And by the, as this plays out over the course of an observing session, there's been some nights where I have to shut down observing just because like I can't do my like kind of close one eye and keep the other eye open. In fact, it even gets to a point sometimes where I'm using my hand to keep my non-observing eye closed. Like I'm holding my eyelid down in order to continue mono viewing. With bino viewing, you can look at the same object for hours without really taking your eyes away from the bino viewer. So it extends my observing sessions. And because I'm able to stay at the eyepiece longer, I believe I see more. Either you get those, particularly with planetary observing, if you're at the eyepiece more, you're going to catch those moments of good seeing more frequently. So you're going to likely see more detail just as a result of that. But there's almost like, we've talked about this before, Chris, your eyes and your brain, it almost is like your brain is sort of stacking images. And the more you look at an object, sometimes the more you see detail. Well, when you're using a bino viewer, you again, you can be there for an hour looking at one object without any discomfort at all. And, in my mind, I see more. So that's the biggest reason. Other reasons are, and I mentioned one earlier, it does seem to kind of improve seeing just a touch. I wouldn't say it's revolutionary. It's not going to be like a atmospheric corrector, but I think you're able to see a little bit better in less than ideal conditions. Mm-hmm. Some people talk about the 3D aspect of using two eyes, particularly with planets and the moon. This one doesn't jump out for me as much as what I've read, but there certainly is something to that. When you're looking at very high contrast, high detail objects, like say Jupiter, Mars, the moon, it really is something else with two eyes. Part of it is that comfort, but part of it is just the way you're able to take that image in. For the most part, we all have two working eyes, and it's just the way I think we're meant to see the world. To take that and see the night sky through a telescope with two eyes, it just works so well for me.
Cool. So let's just see. What's the percentage of like using the bino viewer and using mono viewing eyepieces? What's your ratio of one to the other right now?
It's almost exclusively bino viewing. The only time I'm not bino viewing is if it's a real quick session. I might just set up a telescope with a singular eyepiece. The other time when I'm not bino viewing is with my H alpha solar observing. And I need to change this, because if you read any of the bino viewing forums, most people will say the most impressive gain or advantage a bino viewer will provide is with hydrogen alpha observing. The reason why I'm not doing it there is I just haven't been able to, I haven't spent enough time to get it to focus with my hydrogen alpha telescopes, but I just need to spend an afternoon to do that. One other thing too, I should just mention about the advantages that I don't think I've really touched on. I mentioned that there's like a scale increase for the field of view, like 50 degrees feels expansive, but there's also an image scale increase. Using a lower magnification on the planets, they just appear larger. And because that image scale increases, it again just provides an opportunity to resolve detail probably a little easier than mono viewing, and just helps with that overall experience.
Nice. Why not just get a binoscope, Shane?
When I was going down this path, I considered a binoscope quite heavily. In fact, I think you even remember probably, I was almost about to hit that buy button for one of the APM binoscopes. And what really turned my decision is the versatility of a Bino viewer. Number one, well, let me talk about binoscopes just for a second. Assuming you're going with like a refractor style binoscope, they're large and it changes everything about your observing in terms of you need a bigger mount, you probably need a more robust tripod, and the whole, setup and takedown and transportation, all of that kind of stuff changes a little bit because of how much bigger everything is. And, that was a bit of a turnoff. So I basically had to replace all of my gear if I wanted to do this. And I didn't really love that. So the versatility that a Bino viewer brings is it just works with all of your existing telescopes. So that was a huge plus. Another big benefit to me is if I'm out Bino viewing, like, if we go to grasslands, certainly I'm bringing my Bino viewer, but there might be an object or a period of time where I want the widest field of view possible. Well, within minutes, I can change my Bino viewing telescope to mono viewing with big 2-inch eyepieces and get those maximum fields of view. So that was really what sealed it for me, is the flexibility. I can use it with any telescope, and then I can quickly not use it and just have, big wide field views.
Nice. So let's see, what would be a good Bino viewer, or maybe some options for Bino viewers and eyepieces for people to start with if they don't want to go right to the Zeiss? Because I think you had other ones before you went to the model that you have.
That's right. Yeah. I had a William Optic Bino viewer, which a lot of people start with. It's a nice little set. It comes with 2 eyepieces. I think they're 20 millimeter or something like that. It comes with that Barlow /OCS. It really is everything you need out of the box to get going. So that's certainly an option. And then I had a Dinkmeyer Binotron 27, and beautiful instrument, but it was a little heavy and it just didn't work well for me at that time. And part of it too is I didn't have a good eyepiece selection to support it. And then I eventually settled on the Zeiss ones. But if you're starting out, what I would say first of all is don't necessarily judge the experience if you look through one of your friends' Bino viewers. Chris, I know it sounds like you had a really good experience when you looked through somebody else's.
Oh, yeah.
But if you do that and it's great, that's awesome. If you do that and it's not great, don't necessarily write off Bino viewing, because setting up a Bino viewer can be pretty personal based on a person's IPD or what does that stand for?
Interpupillary distance, the distance between the centers of your pupils.
Yeah. So, that's a big part of Bino viewing. And then you also have to tune the Bino viewer, like for diopter adjustments. So, depending on all of that, it may work for you or it may not. So, don't get discouraged if at first it doesn't, seem to, be beneficial to you.
Mm-hmm.
So if you do get a Bino viewer, definitely spend some time setting it up, because that is important. Get all of those adjustments right. Good Bino viewers to start with, probably the cheaper one, like I mentioned, the William Optic is a good entry level one. The other one, and again, this is not a part of the hobby that's in any way inexpensive. But another real good one would be that Baader Max Bright 2. Now, one other thing with Bino viewing that I think probably is the biggest complaint people have, and the biggest reason why they don't Bino view, is a lot of people cannot, I shouldn't say a lot, some people cannot merge the images. So you're looking at something through the Bino viewer and you're seeing 2 Jupiters or 2 of the same star. And what that typically means is the Bino viewers are not collimated. And a lot of Bino viewers can't be collimated. So if they get knocked out, that's it. There's nothing you can really do. So the Zeiss ones that I have, you can collimate them. The Dinkmeyer Binotron 27s, you can collimate those as well. And I'm not sure about all of the other ones that are out there, but it's a factor to consider. Having the ability to collimate your Bino viewer is a big plus. Now, if you can't merge the images, collimation certainly is one aspect that you need to check, but other things would be the IPD adjustment, the diopter adjustment, or even if you're not viewing at basically a 90-degree angle, like you need to be kind of looking straight through the eyepieces. If you're looking through the Bino viewer and you're not kind of like if your head's at an angle and you're sort of looking through the Bino viewer at an angle, that can sometimes cause merging issues too.
Oh,
and it never really, it never really hooked me until my third attempt with the Zeisses, and it just all came together. It really worked well for me there.
Okay. Anything else that people should know or to add to the show?
Yeah, it can be a little daunting. Again, price is a pretty big factor here. And if you start with Plossels or even end with Plossels, that helps keep costs down. For me, it's something now that I just don't think I'll really do much mono viewing anymore. It is just that much of a game changer for me. The one thing that I am interested in, though, is still a binoscope. The advantage of the binoscope is you're getting 100% of the light through to each of your eyes. And then depending on the binoscope, sometimes you can use 2-inch eyepieces, depending on, the focuser or the diagonal. And that could be a big benefit as well. And some folks make their own binoscopes. If you do some internet searches, there's some real interesting ones using big daubs. And, I can only imagine what the views are like through those binoscopes. And, another big advantage of a binoscope, again, the estimate here varies on the person, but there's an aperture gain without actually having a physically bigger telescope. And when you're using 2 eyes binoscoping, there's estimates out there that you're basically getting a 40 to 60% increase in aperture in terms of how the image is presented. So, for example, if you're using, say, we'll go big here, an 18-inch daub, and mono viewing with that is one thing. But if you binoscope your 18-inch daub, which some people have done, it's not out of the realm of possibility. You can get performance out of that would be the exact same as, say, a 25-inch daub. So kind of intriguing. You can get some, real big aperture performance out of a smaller binoscope. The one that interests me a little bit is the APM 150 millimeter binoscopes. They're quite large, but they are refractors, and having something like that would be quite amazing, because you've got sort of it's not really the form factor of a 150 because you got 2 of them, but you're really getting performance that you would get mono viewing with a 210 millimeter refractor, which is pretty cool.
Nice. All right. Anything else that we should cover for people who are looking to get started with Bino viewers, or maybe people that have already been Bino viewing for a while?
Yeah, I don't think there's much more to add. Certainly, if there's questions, please write us. I'll do my best to answer them. It's just something that works really well for me, and it's not just for planetary and the moon. A lot of things that you'll read initially, people discount Bino viewers for deep sky because of a little bit of that light loss. I'll just say that they work great under under dark skies for deep sky observing. Yes, they are. There's a little bit less light than what you would be getting with mono viewing, but I think you make up for that with your ability to resolve more contrast, more detail. And the other thing you do as a Bino viewer, instead of looking at that galaxy, say at 50 times, maybe you knock it down to 35 times or 40 times magnification, and you're essentially getting the same amount of brightness now into your eye. And I think that the image scale factor that I talked about earlier kind of makes up for the loss of magnification. So there's ways to overcome some of that light loss and have a very similar view, just with far more comfort. And again, in my mind, an ability to resolve more detail.
Nice. Good stuff. Yeah, they're really neat devices. I've looked through probably half a dozen over the years, and the bug never really bit so much with me. I think because I really like the super wide field of views. I got pretty close to buying a binoscope myself a few times, but again, never really bit the bullet because of some of the drawbacks, like you say. But maybe one day we'll see.
Yeah, it's a fun part to consider for the hobby, and it's one that doesn't get a lot of attention, I think, largely due to the price. I think when people see what the price is, it's often thought, well, I could buy another telescope for that amount of money, and that's very true. And it certainly is a big factor in this whole decision.
Yeah, very good. Well, thanks for doing this, Shane. Really interesting to kind of get this down. You've mentioned binoviewers a lot, and finally I thought, we should do a show on this.
Yeah, I'm glad we did.
Good stuff. Got to give a shout out to Mark Radici. You mentioned him earlier, but last weekend, Mark took some time and did a Zoom session with me. We didn't record anything. It was just a friendly conversation about observatories, because he did some measuring of his setup, because my observatory is very much inspired by his. He's the person who really got me off the fence into having an observatory built. Very similar to his. Mine is the same size as his, has the same wheels, a lot of the other same functionality, and I'm probably going to have very similar telescope setup in mine eventually. And I wanted to get the measurements from his telescope so that telescope would eventually fit in this observatory. And then as well, he provided some emotional support for some of the challenges that we've been going through on my observatory. So it was always great. And I think that's one of the neat things about doing this podcast, at least for me, Shane, anyway, has been just connecting with other amateur astronomers. And it's really moved my astronomy along in this direction. I'm pretty sure I probably wouldn't be having an observatory built right now if we hadn't done the show, because it really helped to focus where I want to be going with my own astronomy, and maybe much like with your bino viewing and some of the other things you've been involved in. It really kind of gets you thinking about what you're doing and why and where you want to be going, and then just being able to talk about it together, you and I, or with guests, or even just to be communicating it with other amateurs out there, really sort of helps form and solidify some of the ideas I think that we're having with our own astronomy. It's very therapeutic and helpful. Yeah, for sure. Always love the connections that we make through the show, and hopefully we'll make a lot more. Dear listeners, please subscribe and do us the favor and share the show with other stargazers you know. Thanks for listening, and you can always send us your show ideas, observations, and questions to actualastronomy@gmail.com. Almost sounds like that's a recording, but it's not. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we hope you enjoyed the show. If you are interested in more information, would like to contact us, or if you would like to support the podcast, check out our website, actualastronomy.com.